In our universe and in the world of science, we very often talk about these invisible forces that seem to control everything around us. But today we're going to be discussing a slightly different reality. My financial reality. Because after our last deep dive into things like neutron stars and black holes, unfortunately the YouTube algorithm struggled a little bit. Which made me realize that there's another black hole being formed in my pocket. Yeah, no money. And many of your comments suggested that maybe I should consider a platform called OnlyFans. A lot of you mentioned that this was a way for different creators to monetize their most intimate technical interests. And I'll admit I didn't really know much about it, and so I decided to basically give it a try. Since I didn't really know where to begin, being a man of science, I realized that if I'm going to provide the OnlyFans content, I'm going to have to provide the best OnlyFans content, or basically the best fans engineering can provide. And so today, without further ado, let's begin our journey by looking at this beast right here, Aeroflow 9000. As you can see, it's actually been repurposed as a kind of a HEPA filtration system. As a matter of fact, this right here is my very proud creation, where I attached a very easily purchasable HEPA filter from AliExpress to a massive industrial fan that you can basically purchase anywhere for something like $20. And just look at the curvature of these blades. This is absolutely incredible. This is a 45-degree pitch designed specifically to maximize the Coanda effect. We're talking about something like 15,000 cubic feet per minute of pure, unadulterated air replacement. The air coming out of this thing is just pure joy. When you see this kind of a laminar flow coming out of your fan, it's super hard not to smile. As a matter of fact, this is my only fan, and it just makes me breathe so much easier. And so yeah, I hope you join me on this new platform and help me create more of this only fan stuff. I mean, I actually only have one fan for now, but I'm gonna have to improvise. I guess in the next video we're going to focus on some of the desk fans, which tend to create a slightly different effect, including Doppler effect. And so yeah, my link for the OnlyFans should be in the description. And so happy April Fools everybody, and well, in this video we are going to be discussing science once again. And specifically, as you probably guessed by now, we're going to be discussing some scientific papers that to some extent challenge our understanding by basically being jokes. Because when you're watching this, it's supposed to be April 1st. And every single year, the scientific community releases a bunch of studies that sometimes push the boundaries of what we consider to be normal research. And though quite a few of these are just very obvious, elaborate pranks, some of them might make you scratch your head a little bit because it's not clear if this is a joke or an actual study. And so today we're going to discuss some of them, and one of them is a real study. Try to guess which one. And so here, listen to the facts from each of the studies I'm going to mention, and by the end of the video, try to guess which one is actually real. And, well, as always, let's start with astronomy, and specifically exoplanets. Here, in this study from University of Arizona, a paper proposes a new model, and even suggests that in many cases, some exoplanets may not even exist. In essence here, they argue that thousands of exoplanets we think we've discovered, like for example the WASP-12b planet, do not actually exist, mostly because we are misinterpreting observations. And here they propose a model referred to as the WHAC model. Basically a model that shows us that a rotating cube shape can actually perfectly reproduce very similar dips that end up resembling a planet passing in front of a star. And according to the math behind the study, this trapezoidal flux deviation can actually be explained by a rotating star if it's not perfectly spherical. And specifically a star that's more square in shape. So essentially they propose what's known as a sqoar, a star shaped like a cube. And so they basically suggest that maybe most of these objects we think have planets are just cube-shaped stars. Okay, for our next study we're going to focus on biology, and specifically the biology of cats. This is the feline gravity manipulation, or the MOF-EGD theory. And this is based on the idea that sometimes we notice that cats don't just land on their feet, but they also seem to fall in a very different manner. With the researcher behind the study proposing that this is the result of modified feline gravitational dynamics, kind of like MONS but with a cat element in it. And this suggests that cats, uniquely in the animal kingdom, seem to have an ability to passively manipulate their own gravitational mass through some kind of an unknown element. Or basically their inertia mass seems to remain the same, but they seem to be able to somehow turn off the effects of gravity on their own body. and thus levitate and survive longer falls. Now, around this time there are actually quite a lot of cat-related studies, but I thought this one was particularly interesting. Then we have another one on astrophysics. And here this research applies rigorous astrophysical data, directly correlating everything to Taylor Swift's discography, and specifically her record-breaking Era Tour. And so here this investigates how Taylor Swift's music seems to incorporate and even promote interest in astrophysics by including certain types of celestial terminology in a lot of her songs. You can basically see it summarized in this image. And based on the very thorough analysis and a very long formula, scientists discovered that she indeed seems to use a lot of astronomical words that seem to then result in a lot of interest in astronomy. So for example, visual metaphors like moonlight, stars, and cosmos, used in the album Midnights, seems to then result in a relatively high astrophysics promotion score, with the overall conclusion being that typically Taylor Swift seems to use approximately 12 ± 5 astronomical terms in her songs, thus creating a kind of an unintentional educational pipeline and serving as an unofficial astronomical influencer. Although nowadays, in a lot of scientific studies, this is also sometimes referred to as Swiftology. An actual data science based on a lot of things Taylor Swift seems to do. Okay, moving on. Then we had this, a recent announcement from CERN in Switzerland, where physicists claim to have found evidence for quantum entanglement in sheep. And so here, by using trackers very similar to the ones in particle accelerators, researchers studied the flocking behavior of sheep that seem to roam around CERN, with the study discovering that sheep brains may be entangled, allowing them to move and vocalize simultaneously, regardless of distance, with scientists even identifying a new subatomic particle responsible for this effect, referred to as the mouton. Okay, a side note for non-French speakers, mouton is French for lamb. Here this is now represented by a Greek letter lambda, describing this as a particle of a muon particle, but just much fluffier. Although here they also know that studying this was extremely challenging, because apparently observing the sheep made the physicists feel inexplicably drowsy. Okay, cool. Next, a study from University of Maryland regarding the development of smart underwear, with the researchers pointing out that we normally have a lot of tools for measuring things like, for example, blood sugar levels or heart rate, but we have almost no objective way to track a person's farts. Or, I guess in more scientific terms, no objective way to track the gut health and the microbial metabolism on an hour-to-hour basis. And so to solve this, they created a wearable device that basically snaps behind you and stays inside your underwear. And the device contains electrochemical sensors designed specifically to detect hydrogen gas. And that's the gas that's usually produced inside your gut through fermentation. And so every time you fart, the gas measurements, expelled as flatus, as they call it, provide a direct window into the bacteria inside your gut, with the initial trial being very successful because it was able to detect the exact moment the microbes began fermenting the fiber with approximately 95% sensitivity. And so here they even proposed something referred to as the Human Flatus Atlas, or basically a huge encyclopedia of farts, something that can help doctors to diagnose various gastrointestinal issues. Then we have a slightly different study on the so-called Rizetta stone. Okay, a lot of the viewers of the channel are probably a little bit older, so the term Riz may not mean much to you. But basically here the core premise is a kind of an argument that the field of astronomy, and very likely a lot of other scientific fields, need to evolve their communication style in order to remain hip, or inclusive for the incoming Generation Alpha, and even for the Gen Z. And so essentially they propose using a lot of internet slang in most of the academic publications, in order to basically bridge the gap between boomers, millennials, and the younger sciences that very often use words like Riz, which refers to charisma, and aura, which refers to a kind of an imposing demeanor. And so this idea, known as the Rizetta stone, suggests translating a lot of commonly used terms, the ones that are used in astronomy for example, into something Gen Alpha might understand and relate to, even going as far as translating some of the passages from very famous studies into something that Gen Alpha might understand. Okay, I guess I'm gonna have to try one of these. For example, here's the original passage of the first exoplanet discovery ever. The results described here strongly suggest that one of the nearby galactic millisecond pulsars is accompanied by a system of 2 or more planet-sized bodies. This is from the famous paper from 1992 that discovered first exoplanets ever. Translation. The results no-cap show the aura of the nearby galactic millisecond pulsars is Gucci, and the system may be cooking with 2 or more high-key planet-sized bodies, original goat planets. Yeah. So I'm probably not going to be doing that, but you get the point. And last but not least, we have this study. The study on Promoplot, or one of the potential ways we can actually optimize the space in various scientific studies. And the core issue here is that, well, it's just too expensive to be a scientist, especially due to the rising costs of the publications, or to have your papers published in various journals. Basically, a lot of journals now shifted the financial burden on researchers instead of paying the fees, and so the authors create a Python package referred to as Promoplot, something that automatically inserts commercials and advertisements into the already empty white space that we often find in various corners of various studies. So it would look sort of like this, or I guess like this. And so here this can be used to fully offset a typical publication fee, although here they also suggest that this would have to be put in a lot of different corners. But by using things like discount kickbacks, or finding additional ways to monetize the margins, or even footnotes, the conclusion is that this can actually become a relatively successful additional revenue stream. With this graph basically showing you the overall potential profit, depending on the number of ads that's shown. So maybe this is actually the future of science right here. Now, I personally hope that it's not, but sometimes jokes do become a reality. Okay, so that's the studies. Can you guess which one was real? Okay, I'll give you like 5 seconds while I'm basically playing with my fans right here. My only fans. Ready? Yup, it was the fart study. The fart study was actually real. Everything else was not. And while it does sound like a joke, biosensor technology in the study is already actually being used. So basically this provides us with the hydrogen tracker, allowing for a non-invasive way to monitor the microbiome activity index inside the body. But the other studies, like the cube-shaped stars, the anti-gravity cats, and the entangled sheep, and of course those ads in the science paper, at least for now, were basically just an April Fool's joke. But this also confirms once again that a lot of scientists do have a very strange sense of humor, and sometimes science itself can also be kind of strange, with some really bizarre ideas potentially even turning into something that saves lives. On that note, yep, that's April Fool's stuff for you. We'll come back and do this again next year. And thank you for watching, subscribe, come back tomorrow to learn something else, support the show on Patreon where you can find additional videos without any ads, and you can DM it directly, or by joining channel membership that grants you early access. You can also buy the Wonderful Person t-shirt in the description below. But the OnlyFans thing, yeah, I'm gonna have to think about that. I mean, I actually do have only one fan for now. Don't have much else to show you. Stay wonderful, I'll see you tomorrow, and as always, bye bye.